This video was brought to you by Audible. Head over to audible.com/filmradar or text filmradar to 500 to get a free audiobook, 2 free Audible originals from a curated list, and a 30-day free trial. Parasite has been one of the most talked about movies of the year, and it just made history by becoming the first South Korean film to earn the coveted Palme d'Or award from the Cannes Film Festival, as well as the first ever to win an Oscar, taking home a total of 4 from its 6 nominations, including Best Picture. Non-English language films notoriously have a difficult time finding traction in the States, and I think the film owes much of its success around the world to its reliance on cinematic language rather than spoken language to communicate its themes and its story. Through its production design, direction, cinematography, hair, makeup, and costuming, as well as the blocking of the actors, we examine 2 families on opposite sides of the economic spectrum, and every cinematic tool is put to use to show the contrast between the two, right from the very first shot of the film that looks out of the Kim's semi-basement window, with a glimpse of natural sunlight pouring through, and the camera pans downward. Compare that to the first time we see the Park's home. The camera is moving upward into full view of the sun. Bong uses the balance of light and darkness, natural and urban environments, and a character's vertical position to signal their economic or moral status, with any fluctuations being reflected in the blocking or the camera movement. You're still half over ground, so there's this hope and this sense that you still have access to sunlight, and you haven't completely fallen to the basement yet. It's this weird mixture of hope and this fear that you can fall even lower. The Kims start at the bottom, beneath the garbage, beneath their own toilet, reaching upward towards wealth and prosperity in the form of free Wi-Fi. 높게 들어야 돼, 높게. The first time we see any of them above ground in the light is when they're working and making money. Of course, it's not a high-paying job, and they end up right back underground doing their best to celebrate this small victory when served the reminder of their position by a drunk pissing and puking in the alley right outside their window. Until Min arrives as a literal beacon of light, a beacon of metaphorical hope, who takes a stand when the Kims would not.
정신 차려, 정신! 네 친구 박력 있다.
역시 대학생이라 그리고 기세가 다르다, 기세가.
He brings with a scholar's stone as a present to the family. It's a symbol of wealth and the physical manifestation of Kiwoo's dream of climbing out of poverty.
야, 이거 진짜 상징적인 거네.
In the following scene where Min offers Kiwoo the tutoring job, we see behind him a path leading up towards the light, and each shot in the following sequence follows his journey upward, leaving behind the sights and the sounds of the low-income neighborhood at the bottom, all the way up until he reaches paradise. He works his way to the uppermost level of the house, the peak of the mountain, and successfully completes his infiltration of the Park family. As we follow him downward on his way out of the house, at the exact moment he gets the idea to involve his sister, the camera swings down before cutting to a reverse shot right when he says her name.
이름이 제시카.
And once past the barrier between their secluded paradise and the world outside, moving downward away from the light, the parasite is able to infect its host.
만나 보시겠어요? 근데 이 친구 약속 잡기 되게 어렵다던데.
Ki-jung's infiltration follows the same visual patterns, upward towards the light, climbing to the top and finding her host in Desong, and eventually moving downward into darkness to bring in the next parasite. Katek and Chung-suk both find their way in through more deception shown through more downward movement until they too reach the highest point. And once again, their celebration is cut short by a drunk pissing in the street, but this time Kiwoo responds with the vigor of a college student, with some water to wash away the filth. They've made it. All 4 of the Kims have reached the highest point, and for a brief moment they get to lay back and bask in the warmth of the sun.
이게 집에 누워서 하늘 보고 있는 거거든. 되게 좋아.
Until the revealing of the bunker where we descend to the lowest point, completely underground with no sunlight, no hope.
저기 집도 없고 돈도 없고 빚만 있어요.
We've reached the true bottom, and we see what life is like at the lowest point with no real sunlight, cramped gray corridors, and little in the way of food. It's more of a prison than a home, but it's better than being dead. But despite their pleas as fellow members of the needy, their very presence threatens the Kim's position. and after accidentally killing Moon Guang, the Kims embark on their largest descent yet during a heavy storm, water to wash away the filth. They descend into pure chaos, with sewage water flooding into their home and their neighbors all scrambling to save their belongings, again the plea of fellow members of the needy going unanswered. And in that darkness, surrounded by chaos and destruction, Kiwoo's dream of success returns to him.
돌은 왜 그렇게 껴안고 있냐?
이거요? 얘가 자꾸 나한테 달라붙는 거예요.
The Kims got a taste of paradise, to live in the rich house as if it were their own before the water flushed them right back to the bottom. And it's hard to blame Kiwoo for clutching on to this dream, because in the wake of the storm we see two very different realities. You either wake up to a vanity mirror or in a crowded gym while everyone waits for food, picking out the perfect outfit from a professionally lit closet, or just grabbing anything that fits from the same pile as everyone else. The storm itself is inevitable. It's how much damage that storm causes that's completely dependent on your status. The rich have raincoats and tents, dry towels waiting at the door, and big storm drains to collect any runoff. But the poor, they just have to wait out the worst of it.
부자들이 원래 순진해 꼬인 게 없고 부잣집은 또 애들이 구김살이 없어.
대림이야 대림이. 돈이 대림이다. 구김살을 쫙 펴줘.
Money acts as a barrier, isolating you from the world outside until you're not even sure what reality is anymore. The parks are literally sectioned off from everything, completely surrounded by trees with a locked gate at the bottom. They're disconnected from everyday life. And I think Bong Joon-ho planted a subtle nod to this in Park Dong-ik's Job, where he works in a virtual reality, because they might as well be living in a virtual reality world with access to cheat codes. And that's essentially what life for the rich can be. They have someone to drive them around, to clean their house, cook their food, raise their kids, all of the things that everyday normal people have to do on their own, on top of having a regular job or going to school, is just outsourced to someone beneath them. And this is where the idea of who the titular parasite is becomes blurred. The parks need the Kims just as much as the other way around.
큰일 났죠 뭐. 그 아줌마 없이 오더니 일주일만 지나봐. 집안이 완전 쓰레기 통되지. 내 옷에선 냄새 풀풀 날 거고. 다솜이 엄마가 원래부터 집안일에 재능이 없어요. 청소도 못하고 음식 진짜 맛없고.
The poor are expected to do twice as much as the rich for less than half as much money and are still looked down on simply because they started with less. The system creates inherently toxic relationships because you can't have the wealthy few living like gods while the rest live like insects. Those on top inevitably look down on those beneath them, ready to assume the worst in anyone who they think might be taking advantage of them, and are always more than happy to replace you if you ever cross the line. And for those on the bottom, they will inevitably find themselves in this us versus them mentality. And we all know how most human beings act when push comes to shove. That's what desperation does. All any of the characters really want is to create a better life for their loved ones, but the inherent competitiveness of life in the lower class will always pit people against each other and bring out the worst in people. One of the interesting things that the film takes care to illustrate is that the Kims are fully capable and intelligent people. They work hard and seize every opportunity available to them to try and raise their stature. Both Tae and Kiwoo have potential in the academic world, and both Desong and Kijung have potential in the artistic world. But where the parks can afford college prep tutors and special therapeutic art instructors, the Kims can't afford to send their kids to school, so they're stuck with all of this unrealized potential. We also see a parallel in the achievements of Chung-suk and Dong-ik. They're not unskilled workers, they're not lazy, they just don't have the same opportunities as those above them, which means that when the storm hits, they get hit a lot harder. If light represents hope, we see how even in the harshest conditions the wealthy have a hope that can survive any darkness, while for the poor, that same hope might be exactly what imprisons you. And if the rain represents struggle, the storm that we must all weather, we see how the wealthy can stay dry while everyone else gets drenched, forced to deal with circumstances that a family like the Parks would never understand.
아까부터 드는 생각인데 민혁이라면 이 상황에서 어떻게 했을까?
민혁 오빠한테 절대 이러는 게 안 생기지!
Min acts as a bridge between both worlds, a messenger of hope with a gift in tow that promises a brighter future for the Kim family. He's willing to descend to their level, but it's clear that he's coming from a much different background.
This is your friend, but he's a very rich guy.
Yeah.
이 뒤에 보면은 그 외국제 이탈리제 스쿠터를 타고 있는데 그리고 옷의 느낌도 그러고.
My clothes from this movie is very normal
And
looking.
your hairstyle is also very nerdy.
My clothing, I always had short sleeves.
약간 더 약간 옷을 제때 못 사는 그런 느낌을 주지.
Everything about the clothing and the hairstyling is used to indicate their stature as a family in the lower class. Even their smell gives them away, because a wolf in sheep's clothing still smells like a wolf, and all Ki-woo has ever dreamed of is changing that.
다혜야. 다 잘 어울려.
But some things never change, and that dream that once lifted you up can come back to haunt you. The following scene is an eruption of chaos within what we thought to be paradise, but we now see that no one is safe from the carnage. Rich or poor, we all bleed the same. And what's the point of it all? The poor eating the poor eating the rich. It doesn't matter. All it does is create more trauma and more ghosts, with Katek now assuming the role previously held by Jun-si, left to grieve the loss of his daughter alone and to feel the weight of his guilt. The Parks weren't evil, just detached from reality. All they ever wanted was the same thing that the Kims wanted, happiness and health for their family. But he's the easy scapegoat because of the sheer disgust he shows for those beneath him, even though ultimately he's just a symptom of a larger societal problem that creates these parasitic relationships. Because after he's gone, there's someone to come along and take his place. A new host family with new parasites, and the cycle continues. But Ki-woo still clings to his dream of wealth, to buy the house and to set his father free, where this time to ascend you don't have to lie or cheat your way to the top.
아버지는 그냥 계단만 올라오시면 됩니다.
And that's how the film ends, with a dream, a lingering hope. While they've fallen into winter with heavy snow and limited daylight, there's still a faint light shining in the distance. Parasite was easily my favorite film of the year. Not only is it a masterwork of filmmaking craft, but it puts a spotlight on what I believe to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, problems facing the world at large. Doing so with humor and horror while being fair to both sides of the economic spectrum. It effectively shows the struggle of the average family in poverty and how hard it can be to pull yourself out from underground, using symbolism and visual language that speaks to everyone universally. It's the rare kind of film that manages to shock and to entertain while asking deeper questions that affect all of us as individuals and the world as a whole. And I couldn't be happier to see all of the praise that the film has been getting. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my take on everything, and I would love to hear your own interpretation of the film in the comments. Thank you to Audible for sponsoring this video. Audible is the leading provider of digital spoken audio information and entertainment, with a selection that ranges from biographies to true crime to self-help and everything in between. Whether you're trying to keep up with your favorite authors or want to learn to keep better track of your finances, Audible has something for everyone. Every month, members get 2 free Audible originals as well as any other free audiobook of your choosing. You get 30% off of all regularly priced audiobooks, and with rollover credits and audiobook exchanges, you can keep growing your own personal digital library that will stay yours even if you cancel your membership. Recently, I've been listening to the first book in Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger. I've always been a fan of Stephen King and had read about halfway through the series a long time ago, but for some reason never got around to finishing it. It's a really spectacular series that many consider to be King's magnum opus, a combination of The Lord of the Rings and the spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone that even connects many of his other novels together, and so far it's every bit as good as I remembered. If you'd like to check out their selection for yourself, head over to audible.com/filmradar or text filmradar to 500-500 to get a 30-day free trial, where you can select a free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. Audible has been a longtime supporter of the channel, so signing up is also a way of supporting me in what I'm doing here with this channel. Again, that's audible.com/filmradar, or you can text filmradar to 500-500 for a 30-day free trial, a free audiobook, and 2 free Audible originals.